All right, guys. Tonight, I'm going to look at this little amplifier I bought, I don't know, a couple months ago. Well, maybe not a couple, maybe about a month ago. It is the Nobsound nothing. It doesn't have a model number. It's just the Nobsound. I can show you on my phone here, and on it itself, when you bring it up, that's what it comes up. Brand is Nobsound, Hi-Fi Bluetooth 5.0, blah, blah, blah. No actual model number. You can find it on Amazon still for 100 or 110 bucks, but there is no actual model number on it. About dropped it. Reviewing it right here because underneath is my Marantz SR 4021, which is in almost all my videos because I use it for about everything, and it is a normal sized stereo receiver. Why do I have this? Because I wanted to get it. It's the AYIMA A07 mini amplifier, which it comes and goes. Of course, it's available. I think at the time of this video, it's available right now. But at the time of my interest, it wasn't available. And what makes it so great? It's like $100, and it measures better than a lot of other amplifiers out there. Of course, I was on Audio Science Review, sniffing around through reviews and stuff, and this AYIMA A07 comes up, and it got someone sent it in for testing, and it tested I think in the low to mid 80s for SYNAD, which beats out a lot of other amplifiers, including like I think some of the Emotiva and other Marantz and just a lot of other name brands. It's kind of so shocking to see just this cheap $100 Chinese amplifier measure that well. So I couldn't get my hands on one, so I just started looking for another small amplifier that used the TPA 3255 Class D chipset or module, whatever you want to call it, because there's a bunch of them out there. And couldn't find it. I couldn't get my hands on the AYIMA A07. But I did come across what it's called BRZ Hi-Fi TPA 3255. Comes up on AliExpress and maybe a few other places. And it is based on the TPA 3255 Class D amp module. But one of the AYIMA A07's shortcomings was the outer power brick, or the external power brick. Depending on that power brick, had a lot to do with how well it performed and how much power it was capable of. The interesting thing about this one is the power is built in. It doesn't have an external power brick. But anyway, that BRZ Hi-Fi TPA 3255, blah, blah, blah. I almost had it ordered off of AliExpress, and I was trying to find it other places. You can get it on eBay, but it still ships out of China. And I was trying to find it on Amazon, and I don't know how, because I search this kind of stuff all the time, and I've never seen this on Amazon. Out of all the Duke Audio, FX Audio, SMSL, Topping, the One My or whatever, all these Chinese brands, Sabaj, I've seen them all. Fosse Audio, not seen this one. I've seen a lot of other Nobsounds device or whatever products, but never this one. And it looks exactly the same as that BRZ Hi-Fi TPA 3255, identical. It's just black instead of silver. Start looking at it, it's the exact same amp. They don't list it as that. Nowhere in the literature for this amp do they mention that it uses the TPA 3255 chipset, but everything on it is identical. Even the pictures of the inside are identical to the BRZ Hi-Fi one. So if it quacks like a duck and does other things like a duck, whatever, it's probably a duck. Or it's probably a TPA 3255. I bought it. We'll run over some specs here real quick. I bought it because I wanted to see if there was a budget. I don't want to say cheap, because it's not really cheap. It's actually really well made. All aluminum closure. We'll get into that in a second. But affordable amplifier that performs well. In this sort of scenario, I don't really care where it's made, but does somebody make a small, fairly powerful amplifier that actually measures well and is worth calling a hi-fi amplifier? All right, specifications. It says working efficiency is greater than 90%. No surprise, it's Class D. Output power, it says 315 watts, 4 ohms at 10% distortion. I mean, they don't do the peak power thing anymore to make the watt number look bigger. They used to say, oh, 1,000 watts peak power, blah, blah, blah. In reality, it's like 50 watts RMS. Now, they don't do that, but now they just rate it at a higher distortion to get a higher power number. 10% distortion. It's a high number in measure, but in practice in the real world, most people probably aren't going to really complain about 10% distortion. It's not good. They shouldn't go that high. But yeah, 315 watts at 4 ohms, 10% distortion. 185 watts at 8 ohms, 10% distortion. 260 watts at 4 ohm, 1% distortion. I can live with 1% distortion. And then 150 watts at 8 ohms, 1% distortion. This amp doesn't put out nearly that much power. There's no way. And the easiest way to find out is I've already removed the screws and everything, and I've looked at the power rating on the built-in power supply. It doesn't, the power supply doesn't even put out that much power. So realistically, with a lot of these kind of amps and stuff, I usually just take the whatever they list for power and pretty much cut it in half. So we're going to ignore the 10%. So at 1%, 150 watts and 8 ohms, call it maybe 75 watts, 60 to 75 watts at 8 ohms, maybe 100, 120 watts at 4 ohms, which, I mean, that's not a big deal. That's still a lot of power. I mean, people have been kind of brainwashed for the last 30 years with all these ridiculous peak power ratings that you need 5,000 watts, whatever, tons of power, and you don't. Realistically, 50 watts, a true continuous 50 watts is quite a bit of power. And you'll, a lot of times that you can see that in the old amplifiers and stuff. They're only rated maybe 25 to 45 watts. And then, your bigger vintage amplifiers might have been 50 to 100 watts. And those things just were loads of power because it was real rated power. So if an amplifier says it only has 50 watts, that's still quite a bit. That's more than most people think if it's a true 50 watts. But either way, I'm going to cut all these big numbers in half, and even by doing that, it's still got a lot of power. If it really is putting out even 60 watts RMS and 8 ohms, that's a good amount of power for something this small. Frequency response is the typical 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, which is fine. Dynamic range is greater than 100 dB. If it really is, that's great. Signal to noise ratio, they list it as greater than 111 dB. Again, if it can achieve that, this has not been measured. This is just what they list. If it can achieve greater than 111 dB signal to noise ratio, that's really good. And then your working voltage is 100 volts to 240 volts. Dimensions, it's about 7.5. Hold on, let me grab a tape measure. 7 wide by, including the volume knob, call it 9. Or actually, let's include that Bluetooth antenna. To be safe, 9 3/4 to 10 inches deep. And 2.5 tall. If you're going to give it enough breathing room, call it 3 inches tall. If for anyone that cares, it's 3 pounds. Nothing else crazy. I mean, they listed it as a 300 watt plus 300 watt. That's total BS. Obviously, it has a Bluetooth antenna back here. It uses the pretty standard Qualcomm 3003 Bluetooth 5.0. Nothing to complain about there. It does not support aptX or LDAC or any of those other ones. It's just Bluetooth 5.0. I did not have any trouble connecting to it via Bluetooth with my phone. Pops right up, connected like any other modern Bluetooth. It just kind of works. So the specs are really good, other than the watts. But like I said, who cares? It doesn't matter if those numbers aren't nearly that high. Even if this thing's putting out a true 50 watts, 60 watts at 8 ohms, that's really good for something this size. That's quite a bit of power, especially with an efficient speaker. So let's move into the build. You can just hear that is made of metal. That's the sound of metal. Anyway, and then the front is also aluminum power button. All 3 of your EQ knobs and your volume knobs on this are all aluminum. And what I like about these knobs is the power is it's a good old-fashioned just click E power. Powered on, off. on, off. Nice heavy click, just like a vintage. And then even all your, you know, your high, mid, low tone adjustments, whatever you want to call them. Nice, smooth. It feels just like an old receiver. Very, you know, you can tell there's like contact grease on the pot or whatever is in there. It's nice, and it's got a nice, smooth, slick feeling to it. And interesting about this, the high knob on this also is what turns on your engages or disengages these tone knobs. You can hear a nice click. So when that's all the way down, tone knobs are disabled. When this clicks on, now they're enabled, and you just adjust it to where you want it. And then the volume is the same as all the other knobs. Nice, just slick, slimy, you know, metal. Feels just like an old receiver. Nice, very nicely done. So can't complain there. We got all metal construction, all metal button, all metal knobs. Everything seems great. It's, as you can see, in comparison to, it's much smaller than a standard size stereo. Still a little bigger than some of these other little compact Class D Chinese amplifiers. This one does have venting in the top, which is nice, and venting in the bottom. Did come with these nice thick rubber feet on the bottom. All nice thick aluminum chassis. And I thought about sending this in for measurements because I actually like this layout or design more than the AEMA A07 because it does not have an external power brick. They've taken that power brick, widened the chassis, whatever, and put the power brick inside, which you'll see in a minute. And then they've given you a standard IEC power plug, your stereo right and left binding post, a basic right-left line in, and obviously it's your Bluetooth antenna. Now they call this a power amplifier, but technically since it has Bluetooth integrated into the amplifier, which means for Bluetooth is digital, so if it has Bluetooth, it has to have a DAC. So now we got Bluetooth and a DAC integrated into this, so it is no longer a power amplifier. This is technically an integrated amplifier because it has a Bluetooth and a DAC integrated into it. I don't really use Bluetooth much. I tried it out to see if it works. It sounded fine. It didn't sound terrible or distorted or anything. It sounded just fine. The sensitivity of it was fine. It still got plenty loud, even on the Bluetooth. I'm not big on Bluetooth, so I'm not going to expand too much on that. If it was up to me, I would have them completely get rid of this Bluetooth, the DAC, the antenna, the whole Qualcomm chip, take it all out, literally, and just make it an actual just a small power amplifier and just focus on that. And if they could get the price down to $80 instead of 110, or even just $100, shave off $10 by getting rid of that Bluetooth, I'd be all for it. Because if I'm going to do Bluetooth, I'm going to use some sort of external DAC like my SMSL M200, or just not do Bluetooth. I don't do wireless on audio. So, but if you do, it is there. And I had zero trouble with it. It sounded fine. It sounds as good as Bluetooth 5.0 is going to sound. Obviously, the DAC built in for it's probably not that great, but it does the job. So, and then, even though it does use these small, almost like miniature binding posts, these are some full-size BFA style banana plugs I often use for this demonstration. You would think they wouldn't accept a full-size banana plug, but you'd be wrong. These suckers... And this was what kind of grinds my gears, is a lot of these budget speakers I review, the binding posts they come with, the review I just did on the JBL Stage A130s, really good speaker. Now a $300 speaker, the binding posts on those can only accept half of like these. They only go in, on a lot of these speakers, these things only go in maybe, I don't know if you watch some of my other reviews, they only go in maybe that far, about halfway, which is silly. I mean, just use these binding posts, because I'm sure it's just a threaded nut through the back of this. They could just use these on speakers. And these are plenty deep, even for a full-size banana plug. And it's just more, you get more contact area and better support, especially if you got thick 10-gauge heavy wire like this that's going to be hanging on here. So, yeah, just because it's got these small binding posts, they still can take on a full-size banana plug. There's not a whole lot to see on the outside. We kind of went over everything. Let's pop the top. Now, I did find this interesting. It is, let me flip this, get it right side up here. Don't Tear Up the Warranty, okay? By Duke Audio. And it's, again, these, like Nobsound, Duke Audio, One My, I don't know, Fosse, FX Audio. A lot of these little Chinese brands, they seem to all kind of build from the same generic part bin to an extent. Some of the stuff on the inside changes, and they do a little bit of their own engineering, but a lot of these little Chinese audio products all sometimes end up looking alike. Just like I said, this looks identical. It doesn't look, it is identical to the BRZ Hi-Fi. Who came up with it first? I don't know. All I care about is that this one was on Amazon as Prime for $110, where the BRZ Hi-Fi one on AliExpress or eBay, by the time you include shipping, was just over 110. You know, and then you got to wait to get here from China. So, and then I don't know why Nobsound didn't give it a model number. They could have just called it the TPA 3255 or 3255 or something, because it's a great little amp. Nobody can find this thing. Like I said, I look on eBay and Amazon and AliExpress and a lot of these websites for these little amplifiers all the time, because I like to review them because they're cheap and easy to review, and some of them are quite surprising for the money. And I never come across this one. And Nobsound should be doing something to or change that, because people should definitely be finding this. This is a great little amplifier with a few cons or caveats, whatever. So yeah, I just thought that was just kind of funny that, you know, maybe Duke Audio makes their own. I don't know. Let me pull the cover off or remove the screw. So we'll remove the top and take a look at the inside. I haven't decided if I want to send this thing off to like Audio Science Review, and I think there's even a few other guys online that you can be sent to, and have it measured. I probably will. I just want to, because this is, I think, is actually about the same price or cheaper than the AIMA A07. Maybe it performs better, I don't know. But yeah, here's the inside. And you can see what they did is they just took an actual power brick. Normally there'd be a plastic housing over this, you know, with your power coming in from the wall and then power going out to your little round barrel plug. They just took that power brick and just integrated it into the chassis. Which is, I mean, it works. It says like hold on, let me look at the specs. It does, I think it does in the specs say something about the power supply they're pretty proud of. Yeah, it does say high quality components, built-in large power, high efficiency switching power supply, high precision chip resistors for better signal to noise ratio, special inductance for audio to ensure clear and powerful sound. Pure aluminum chassis and fine process with good heat dissipation. But yeah, it's supposed to be a high quality switching power supply, which I believe all Class D amps use switching power supplies. But if you look here on the side, there is some ratings here. In this, you want to look at the output, and it says it's 36 volts at 9.5 amps, which is quite a bit. That's higher than you're probably going to find on a lot of external power bricks. So let's jump in the old calculator, and to get our watts, all we got to do is take 36 volts. It's just volts times amps. 36 volts times 9.5 amps. If this power supply was 100% efficient, it would put out 342 watts. Now, if it was only 80% efficient, I think we can multiply that by 0.80. Even at 80% efficiency, that's still 273 watts. I don't know if it's that efficient or not. I don't know if this power supply could ever crank out 270 watts or not. It's kind of why I want to send it in to find out, because I don't know, maybe it is really powerful. I just doubt it, because most of these aren't. And then it looks like, I think these are, I don't know if these are your op amps. I'm not a professional or a genius here on this stuff, but I think these are some op amps or something here. They're not soldered, so these can be swapped out. I know some people like to do that. Here's the Qualcomm Bluetooth chip over here. And then you have 4 wires going each, but obviously it's 2 per, so you got 2 for the positive, 2 for the negative on each. because I thought it's pretty skinny wire, but you do have 2 of them for each, and it is very, you know, laid out very clean. I believe these are all Japanese, like JRC pots or whatever you call them. Nice. There's that nice mechanical clicky power button. I just can't complain. I don't have much to complain about. Very nice little amplifier. Now we're gonna put the lid back on and hook it up. And the one thing I don't like, we're gonna talk about here in a second. All right, got it all hooked up here. You can see, got all my wires hooked to it. It is ready to go. So let's power it on. Turn the volume down first, and we're gonna turn this off. You get a red LED indicator here that it's on. And in this mode, with this off, that is just straight amplifier, no tone controls. As you can see, and I'm using my own DIY speakers that I built, and these speakers are not super efficient. They're probably like 83, 84 dB. They're not super efficient. So they do take some power to get them going. And even with this, even just right there, and I do like that they actually notched each knob so you have some sort of indication where it's at and you know where the volume's at. So kudos there. But yeah, even right here, that's comfortable listening level, even on these inefficient speakers. And then pretty loud. I mean, even at halfway, I mean, I'm just listening to, what is this, Miles Davis, so, but yeah, you can tell there's some power there. Now, what I don't like is I don't really like the sound signature of this amp when the tone controls are off. As far as mids and highs, it's fine. But for some reason, it just doesn't seem to have much low end when the tone controls are off. It seems kind of, well, I don't know exactly. I don't want to give you some weird subjective adjective or it just, I don't know, it just seems like it doesn't have enough bass. Any of my other amplifiers in any sort of bypass or just regular mode, on the same music, it has more low end. This, for whatever reason, when the tone controls are off, the low end is kind of gone. That, and it's much louder when the tone knobs are disabled. And I know a lot of other older amplifiers, if you were to turn all the tones down, you would lose a lot of gain or volume or whatever. But it is, once you turn this up here, let's see if you can tell. Well, I'll click this on. When the tone controls come on, you lose some volume. See that? Off. And it's not just because the highs are turned down. The mid and bass are still at half, which is pretty normal, but off. You lose quite a bit of power. Like, you lose quite a bit of power once you turn the tone controls on. I don't know what that's all about. But unfortunately for me, I don't. I want the loudness that I get without the tone controls, but I don't like the sound signature without it. So I do like that this knob, this indicator turns green when the tone controls are on, because it will bring this up to, bring them all to half. And like most other amplifiers, they all sound fine at half. Probably gonna get some sort of copyright because it'll detect that this is Miles Davis. And yeah, you can bring up your highs and lows and kind of create your smiley EQ, and it sounds very nice. Even with them all with most speakers, even with them all just right in the middle, sounds very nice. I mean, it's hard to compare with just the human ear, but detail seems good. Still have a decent amount of power. It's going high because this is not very loud music. This music is not compressed here. Let me change the music. That might help. We'll use this one. This is more modern music. It's probably got a much more compression stuff. So it's much louder. That Miles Davis was a high-res Miles Davis, so it's gonna have no compression. It's gonna be pretty quiet. But yeah, even with the tone knobs on now, and my speakers not being very efficient, it's still quite powerful. And then if you turn the tone controls off, you get a lot of that, you need more power. Off. And you know, when it first comes on, it sounds weird because your highs are all the way down. But by the time you bring those back up, so yeah, I mean, I don't know if it seems like it actually has 200 or whatever, how many over watts, that the crazy amount of power they listed into 4 or 8 ohms, because I have that is a VTV Hypex 252 sitting back there. I've been testing. That is 250 watts times 2 into 4 ohms, and I guarantee that thing would blow this thing out of the water. So I don't know. It's one of those things. It's just I'd have to send it in to see what it's really putting out. All I can say is for its size and everything, it does put out quite a bit of power. This thing can get pretty loud, pretty cleanly. A lot of these cheap amplifiers, you start to turn them up, they start to distort, just fall apart. Yeah, I mean, you push it hard enough. I had it on almost full volume, and it still, these speakers I have, since they're fairly inefficient, you can cram quite a bit of power down their throat before they start distorting, and it takes a decent amount of juice to get these speakers loud and really get them going. So they said, I don't know if the watts they list they're probably not accurate. They're probably highly overrated, but whatever it is putting out for power, it's a decent amount of power. And it, you know, I had, let me stop this so I don't crank them up again. I had it clear over here, you know, nearly all the way up, and it was not falling apart or you know, getting crackly or distorting or anything. So kudos there. So I like everything about it. It's great. I think you're getting a good amount of power, good build quality, knobs that are just fun to turn, power button that's fun to push. It's got good weight to it. Yeah, it doesn't have everything you need built into it, but you can get a really good DAC for not much now. Or, you know, if you're just going to do Bluetooth, you're going to use your phone or whatever as a streamer anyway. My only complaint is the tone controls. I was hoping that leaving them off, because I typically don't use them. I will if something, like in this case where something doesn't sound right. I know EQ and tone controls, for some reason, the last 30 years has been given this stigma, like, you know, audiophiles don't use EQ or tone controls. This stuff just sounds great out of the box or whatever. And it's such BS. There's nothing wrong with using EQ or tone controls to adjust your system to the way you like it. It may not be a transparent or flat response or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're the one that has to listen to it. It's got to sound the way you like, so there's nothing wrong with using an EQ or tone controls. I think it's kind of sad you don't see physical, you know, what are they, graphic EQs in people's stereo racks anymore. For some reason, that has become like a no-no, and well, I kind of know why, but it's silly. So, yeah, nothing wrong with using tone controls. So in this case, yeah, I got no problem using them. The only thing I don't like about using them is you seem to lose some power when they're on. So, and I mean, if you wanted to, I guess you could crank all these to like higher. But yeah, it's not a huge con for me. And this thing at $110, what you're getting for $110, I think you're getting a great little amplifier. I don't know if this is going to mean much to anyone. I'll link it so people can find it on Amazon, because like I said, I've spent tons of time and hours on Amazon looking at all these cheap little Chinese amplifiers and everything. And some of them, you know, you get exactly what you pay for. Some of them you get a little more than you pay for or whatever. This one, I think you're getting a little more. For 110 bucks, I think you're getting a really good amplifier. I know I reviewed it was the Fosse Audio HDA1. They listed as this audiophile, pretentious, toroidal amplifier, and it sounds all right. And it sounds kind of soft and warm, and maybe they were intending that. But when I sent it in, it measured very poorly, very poorly. The cheaper Fosse Audio BT10A little amp size of a deck of cards measured better than it did. And subjectively, you could say they did it on purpose to create this soft, warm, vintage sound, or whatever you want to call it. But comparing, and that amplifier was much more expensive than this one. If I remember right, that one's like 150 to 200 bucks. This one is about the same size, is more powerful, and to me sounds much better. So I think that's going to be it. Comments, whatever in the bottom, like, subscribe. My Instagram and Facebook will be linked in the description. I hardly use Facebook, so if you want to see what I'm doing, probably on Instagram. No remote, which kind of sucks. It's a desk-worthy amp, but I also think this amp would be worthy of a, in the living room with some nice bookshelf speakers instead of some stupid soundbar. It would have been great if they, Nobsound, if you're going to take this platform and make it better, because I think you got a good start here. Keep or get rid of the Bluetooth, whatever. Add in a remote. I think a remote would be great with this. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Good night, guys.